Hello everyone and welcome to another HR Grapevine webinar. My name is Liam Suter, I'm the online editor for HR Grapevine, and today I have the pleasure of welcoming you to a session hosted by Winning Temp, which, as I'm sure you're gathered by now, is going to be addressing the issue of using HR data to improve employee engagement. So firstly, just a little bit about Winning Temp. They are an AI-powered platform that enables you to visualize employee development and gain insights that enhance engagement and mental well-being while minimizing stress and staff turnover. There is a link below to the Winning Temp website if you want to hear a bit more about them as well. So today, we're going to be discovering strategies that help us overcome common obstacles like poor communication, a lack of appreciation, work-life balance, and negative company cultures. We'll be sharing real-world examples on how to successfully address these challenges and provide expert tips for boosting employee engagement at your company. So today's session is going to be presented by Philip Cohen, who is the Customer Success Manager at Winning Temp, and Employee Experience Manager, Emily Heikera. As with all of our webinars, you don't just have to sit there and listen today. You can also get involved in the session. We're going to have the Q&A function running at the side of your screen there, as we always do. So please do get your questions in there, and we'll hopefully get around to answering as many of them as we can at the end of the session. We're also going to be running a couple of polls, one of which is going to be launching in just a second. And we want to know, how do you regularly measure employee engagement? Do you regularly measure employee engagement? So get your answers in there, because the team at Winning Temp are really keen to get your feedback today. And finally, do stay tuned right to the end, because we're going to be wrapping up today's session with a little video demo of Winning Temp's platform as well. But without further ado, I will do what I do best, which is skulk away into the background and hand over to Philip and Emily, who are going to talk you through today's presentation. So Philip, over to you.
Thanks ever so much. Thanks, Liam. Thanks, Lauren, and all the team at HR Grapevine for all your help today. It's really appreciated. It's great to be partnering with you today. Thanks ever so much also to Eric, Nigel, and all the marketing team on our side as well for all your help putting everything together today. I know you've worked very hard, and yeah, I'm sure it'll be a tremendous success. And thanks to you for joining in today and taking time out of your day to spend with us. I hope you find it useful as well. The agenda for today, Emily, is that we'll do some introductions. Then we'll talk a little bit about HR data. Then talk the second half of the equation, employee engagement, and we'll see how they've both sort of evolved and changed over the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years or so, and then we'll put it together to see how that's affected, how that's put into practice from a management point of view on an operational level, and then we'll scope out and look at a bit about how it affects the whole business and how the whole business sort of comes together. But all of that obviously is just a warm up for the star of the show today, Emily, who will be talking about how you put all of that into practice, how we put it into practice, I should say, here at Winning Temp. So without further ado, being British, I'm going to say ladies first. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. So hi, everyone. My name is Emily Heikera. I am the Employee Experience Manager here at Winning Temp. I've been working for the company for about 4 years in different roles. And before that, I've been working within the HR sector for about 13 years already, mostly for larger enterprise companies. So that's really brief about me and my background.
Thanks, Emily. My name's Phil Cohen. I've been working with Winning Temp for about 1.5 years now. Before that, I was working in recruitment technology, ATS, assessments and all that sort of thing. So some of that might sort of seep a little bit into the presentation we've got for you today. So before we get into today's topic, I just want to share a little bit about what it is that we do here at Winning Temp. Our business idea and vision is to forever change how people succeed together. When employees find their job meaningful, when they receive feedback on how they're doing, when they have the possibility to contribute and continue to develop and learn, they will also perform better and help the company reach its desired results. Winning Temp is not only the name of our company, it is also the name of our product. Winning Temp stands for Winning Temperature and is an employee engagement platform software solution where our customers can collect feedback from their employees on a weekly basis regarding how they perceive leadership, involvement, stress, teamwork, etc. WinningTemp uses AI to send out relevant questions linked to each employee's work situation. So if, for example, you have one employee experiencing a stressful period at work when answering questions regarding the work situation one week, the system will continue to ask follow-up questions related to stress over a period of time to see if it was just a one-time situation where the stress levels were high, or if we have a negative trend and need to prioritize activities to improve the situation. And like Liam said, if you're curious to learn more about our product, you're welcome to stay on for an additional 2 minutes at the end, where we'll show a video about how WinningTemp works. So if we could start with HR data. So time was when an HR director would come along to a board meeting and the sales director would get up and produce their stats, their data for the last year and show what sales they'd achieved. The marketing team the marketing director would put across a presentation about all the marketing initiatives, the campaigns that they'd run. Finance would be doing the same, but HR would sort of be sitting there quietly, not able to contribute much because they just didn't have the data available. So then came along HRIS, they'd implement their HCM solutions and come along to the board meetings and say, hey, we've got some stats to talk to you about. We've got some data here on our in terms of recruitment, time to hire, cost per hire. They've got an idea of their demographic background, the diversity of the teams, the turnover, the amount of new recruits that they've hired, and so on. But all of that was a snapshot, if you like, pretty much like they had before, of what had happened over the last 6 months, 12 months, or whatever it is. What had happened in the meantime is other functions had moved to be more strategic with their data, using it for forecasting and looking to the future. And so now we're in a situation where HR is using their data in a more strategic kind of forward-thinking kind of way, but they're in playing catch-up mode. I am definitely seeing more of an interest in the data, in the numbers that we produce here at WinningTemp. And we're seeing HR professionals either upskilling themselves or hiring data analysts, specialists, to be able to interpret that data and do what we said, think of it in a bit more of a strategic way. So that's sort of HR, if you like, the data side. On an employee engagement side, we've also seen quite a dramatic evolution, quite a dramatic change over the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years. If we look at the top of the circle, don't want to talk too much about COVID, but the two things that really changed in terms of our mindset shift was in terms of our understanding of well-being and our understanding of productivity. Traditionally, when we'd looked at well-being, if we were to talk about this sort of 3 years ago, we'd be looking at our employees as individuals and saying, okay, how are they? Is their physical health okay? Are they able to do their job? But with the advent of the pandemic, what we've started to realize is that sphere of well-being is a lot broader than just that one employee. That individual may have a partner or a spouse. They may have dependents, they may have kids that need homeschooling, getting the nightmare flashbacks now as I think about it. But they may also have caregiving responsibilities as well. They may have parents and so on that they have care responsibilities that they may have to look after. Dare I say it, they may even have a pet as well. And all of that comes into the well-being of that one individual. Now, you might say to me, well, there's not a lot that as a manager you can do or an HR professional you can do about that. But nonetheless, these things will affect that person's engagement. So to give you an example, we've got 3 clients with sites out in Turkey. Now, they're getting some very worrying, some very troubling feedback, some red feedback through on WinningTemp about the well-being of their employees. Fortunately, their employees are situated away from the earthquake, but obviously they've got loved ones, friends and family that are directly affected by what's going on. Now, as a manager, there's not a lot you can do about that, obviously, but nonetheless, you need to know about that because that is going to affect the engagement, the well-being of the people under your management. Not only have we had to rethink the breadth of well-being, but we've also looked at different layers of it as well. So it's not just the physical well-being of the individual. We've started to think about mental well-being, financial well-being. All of these things come into the mix as to what it is that makes up that person and their engagement within the team. And all of that would affect their productivity. Now, productivity traditionally was meant in terms of bucks in the bank. How much money can we make per hours worked? And the equation tended to go, okay, if we work all hours every day, and we work all hours that God sends, we'll be able to get a high level of productivity. But we started to realize that those business models aren't sustainable, and that kind of way of working can't continue over a long period of time. You're going to get burnout. And so we've started to think in terms of sustainability as it impacts engagement rather than productivity. So the idea of sustainability started coming from the investment community, I guess, back sort of 3-4 years ago, when they were looking at the companies that they invest in. So they were saying, in light of climate change, environmental factors, and so on, are these companies that we're going to put our money into are they still going to be around in sort of 5-10 years time? And they were looking at it in terms of what's known as ESG. You've probably heard the initials: environmental, social, and governance. Are these and looking at that as a framework for assessing the viability of their benefactors, of the businesses they were investing in. So of course, as a business, you were coming to all of that was coming to the board table, and looking and as a business, you were looking at, well, what is our key asset? What is it that we need to be to measure our sustainability? And well, it's our workforce. And HR were looking at, well, okay, we've started to look at, okay, well, how sustainable is our workforce? Are they going to be in it for the long run? And of course, a key metric of that is engagement, because if you've got a high level of engagement, not in the short term in terms of the productivity that we were just saying, but in terms of the long term, then you're going to have a much more sustainable workforce. To sort of make that link, what we're starting to measure is a sense of meaningfulness in the work, or purpose in what people do. Because if they've got that sense, that bigger vision, maybe it's the company vision or whatever it might be, that bigger picture, then they're more likely to be engaged in the work that they do. And they'll see the sort of peaks and troughs in their workload in the terms of the bigger picture. So when things do get heavy and that big order comes in from the client, or there's a big tender to fill out, they'll work through the night to do that, because they know this is just a temporary blip along the journey that they're taking. So we use engagement as a way of measuring sustainability more and more than looking at productivity. And that sort of sweeps out nicely to the next subject, talk about 8 o'clock on the dial, I guess, and that's culture and leadership. The two are deliberately paired up. As we all know, your recruits are going to join a culture. They're going to leave because of a manager. The two go together very tightly. You need the leaders to be able to mentor and to model your company culture. And of course, that's become a lot more difficult, or a lot more challenging when you've got a workforce that's flexible, working from home, working remotely. What we can do, though, is we can tie that in with engagement again, because by measuring the engagement, we can get a sense of how the company culture is getting along. In fact, what I do with a lot of clients now is look at their engagement profile, their engagement data, almost like a business analyst would. And we say, well, look, okay, well, this is your as is. What would your to be? What would be your ideal profile? And we start to use engagement data for culture mapping and seeing how we can move them with their leadership team from the culture, the engagement profile that they've got, to what it is that they want to achieve in the business, where they want to be in terms of engagement. Next down the line, again, kind of linked, you can see where the link might be in terms of staff retention and attraction. The link between employee engagement and staff retention, I think, is very well researched, very well documented. The higher the level of engagement, the more likely your workers are to stay within the business, really. The less engaged they are, they're just going to feel detached from the business, and they're going to be more likely to be plucked away by a competitor or just fall away from the workforce altogether. But also we can look at engagement in terms of attraction as well. The equation works both ways, because we can see that engagement, high levels of engagement, can be used, I guess, like a magnet in your recruitment marketing, and it can form part of your EVP, your employee value proposition. Because by showing high levels of engagement, you're able to use that as a marketing, as part of your marketing strategy for attracting and hiring new talent. It really, as I say, I used to work in recruitment, and it used to really bug me when you'd see clients we'd work on their recruitment page, and you'd see on their recruitment page there'd be these beautiful models, actresses, actors in their photo studios, and you'd be looking at it and saying, well, this isn't your business. This is staged. Let's have some real life stories from real employees, some real photos of what really goes on in your business, and use your culture as a magnet for new recruits. And so we're seeing a link between engagement. We'll come on to how we do that in just a moment, but between using your engagement data as a way of attracting new candidates, new recruits. We also see, just through the clients I work with, high levels of engagement linked with good attraction, good applicant to vacancy ratios as well. Lastly, I think the Cinderella in the room here is L&D, learning and development, training. I think it really doesn't get the attention it deserves in terms of its relationship to engagement. But there is a lot of evidence to suggest there is a link. For example, in the early 2020, LinkedIn put out some research showing that there'd been an uptick in the number of vacancies, the demand for L&D professionals. And it's easy to see why. Let me give you some stats from an article in the HBR in April last year, I should say, based on some research from Deloitte. Organizations with a strong learning culture are 92% more likely to develop novel products and processes, 52% more productive, 56% more likely to be the first to market with their products and services, and 17% more profitable than their peers. But here's the kicker. Their engagement and retention rates are also 30 to 50% higher. So if you've got a strong L&D function, you're showing your staff that you're investing in them and they're long term. And so they're more likely to stay within the business. So you get higher levels of engagement. And we see that, I see that with my clients all the time. I work with training providers and I work with in-house L&D as well. And in both cases, we can see that where you put people through an L&D program, be it a leadership program, upskilling or whatever it is, you'll see a high level of engagement against control groups where you haven't. Now, to be clear, when I'm talking about L&D, I'm not talking about health and safety stuff, what fire extinguisher you need to use, what boots you need to wear in the warehouse. We're talking about upskilling the talent pool, and that has obviously reciprocal effects on both HR and management and the individual as well. You're upskilling them so they feel more capable, they're more able to do their work, and they feel that TLC, they feel that they get that warm fuzzy glow from knowing that they mean something to their employers, even if it is spending a couple of days with a flip chart and a plate of donuts. But also for the employer as well, you've got that level of engagement, and you've got that higher staff mobility, and just a more enriched talent pool, a more enriched workforce, which means that can ultimately give you your sustainable advantage against your competitors. Next slide, please. So we've looked at HR data, HR analytics, people data, people intelligence, whatever it's called at the moment, talent intelligence, I think it's called at the moment, and we've looked at the employee engagement side. How do we pull the two together? Now, I know there's a couple of my clients on this call. You will be very familiar with this diagram, so apologies, you've seen it a few times, but it really is the backbone to a lot of what we do at Winning Temp. It is basically a model of data-driven management, and it's how we encourage our clients to use Winning Temp. It may be familiar to you if you've come across if this is something that you use in your company, but let's go through it nonetheless. We start at 12 o'clock at the top of the circle. You gather data from your teams. You then start to analyze that data. Now, the data will, broadly speaking, fall into two categories. You'll have the green feedback, the stuff that's having a positive impact on your engagement, which is great. And like I say, that stuff you can use, perhaps put it on Glassdoor or put it on your social media, socials, or just help share it within the team. But you need to help share it with other people, other managers. But you need to understand how it's working. Why is it having that positive impact like it is? You don't want to get complacent about that. You need to make sure that it's something that doesn't stop. It's something that you can continue to do over time. You don't want to get complacent. If you don't believe me, speak to a Liverpool football fan. But you also need to look at the red stuff as well. And this is the stuff we don't like to think about. It's the stuff that's going wrong, the stuff we need to improve on. All of that comes together in the mix, and all of it is equally valid. We need to understand the positives, not going to be British about it. We need to not shy away from all the praise that we're getting. We also need to understand what can be done better. And we go through that with the teams. Now, the different businesses go about this in different ways. Maybe it is, if you're a small business, it could be something you're the MD or the ops director goes through directly with everyone in the business. They have town halls or whatever it is. It could be something that you split off with your managers and you divest for them to do. It could be something that HR takes on. I really don't want to get into the whole, whose responsibility is engagement. Is it with HR or is it with the managers? That's a whole topic for another conversation. But whichever way you work, you come together with the team to put together some initiatives to address this data. And there was a lovely phrase a client used for me the other day. They said that we like to take ownership. We want the managers and the teams to take ownership of their data, of their temperature and of their engagement. It's something that belongs to them, and each manager has their own sense of what it is that's going on in their team. So you have these initiatives and you put them, you implement them. But the story doesn't stop there. In fact, we start back at the top of the circle again at 12 o'clock. We start all over again because we want to measure the impact of those initiatives on the temperature, on the engagement of the team or the business. So again, we look at have these initiatives had the impact we wanted? Maybe they're working better than we expected. Great. Again, we need to understand that. We need to continue that. Are they having a lesser effect? Are they not having the effect we wanted? Do we need to fine tune them? Do we need to add things to them? Do we need to swap them in with something else? And obviously things may change as well. We need to add to them as well. So again, we're sort of building those into an action plan, an updated action plan that we then need to put into practice. And hey, we're back up at the top of the circle again because we need to measure the impact of that. So we're in this constant feedback loop of listening on the right-hand side of the circle and analyzing and then learning and acting on that feedback. Now, I should say that the left-hand side of the circle, the listening and the acting, is the part that drives the right-hand part of the circle. Because if you're not listening, if you're not showing that you're at least taking in the feedback and looking out for the feedback, then the right-hand side will just dry up. People will stop giving you their data. So we need both. What we happen to do in Winning Temp, I know there are other solutions that do this, some do, some don't, is we anonymize the data. And that way, it gives everybody in the team a chance to be as open and honest as they possibly can, but also creates a sense of inclusivity as well. It means that everybody in the business, everybody in the team has an equally valid opinion. As a manager, you're not really fussed where that feedback's coming from. All you care about is what's going on in your team. What do I need to know to be able to do a better job of managing the team right now? So we create, by doing this, yes, we create a data-driven approach to management, but we also create a culture of listening and learning, listening leaders, as I like to call it. It makes the teams more resilient, and it also makes the teams more engaged as well through going through that cycle, going through that process. What it means for the managers, though, is it means that, back to the subject of today's webinar, is it means that their decisions that they make are based on data, not based on gut feel. It means that they can present the data to their senior leadership team, to the directors or whoever it is, and say, hey, look, this is the feedback we're getting from the teams. This is what we need to be doing to improve. It's meaning that they've got a much stronger case to make for what it is that they need to do. So if there's costs involved, they can justify those costs. Two things to keep in mind. It does sound a bit of a fairy tale, this sort of blissful sense of ever increasing engagement. But there are two sort of things to keep in mind, two caveats, if you like. Firstly, you need to manage expectations. Okay. There's no point, the people in the team know that there are limitations to what it is that you're able to deliver as a manager. Like I was saying earlier, there's not a lot that the managers can do about an earthquake or about a pet, but at least you can have a listening ear and understand what it is that's going on in their lives right now. Likewise, from the employee's point of view, you got to understand, you want gold-plated toilets, it's not going to happen. So there are limits to what the manager can deliver. So keep that in mind from that. But also you need to set expectations in terms of the rhythm of this spinning round. There's no point in trying to review your data every week or so if that's just not a sustainable way of working. It's better to space the rhythm out further, maybe every month or every quarter, and that way you give yourself a chance to actually absorb it all, take it all in, and analyze it. If I'm, for example, going to put in data at the beginning of the month, if I know that there's a review meeting at the end of the month, I know that in 3 weeks' time I don't expect to hear anything back because that's going to be reviewed at the end of at that meeting. But if I don't know when that meeting is, if I don't know what that rhythm is, if I don't have that expectation, 3 weeks go by and I don't know why the feedback I've given hasn't been responded to. So it's important to not just have a set rhythm, but also to communicate that as well. Okay, move slides. So that there was looking at the sort of operational side of the business. This pyramid you can see here is one that we often use in customer success to work with clients. Just to go through it, on the bottom you have the functional use of our product, which is like the users, getting them set up, making sure the integrations are right and they're able to log in and they're getting what they want from the system. The operational side is the bit that we just talked about, the way the managers are using the system, making sure they're able to make the decisions they need to get and they're getting the feedback through that they need. But also at the top, we need a strategic view as well. And with a product where you're looking at it too frequently, you can kind of lose a sense of that more strategic approach. So it's important to keep that in mind as well, and make sure that at the senior leadership level, you're getting the data, the bigger scale data that gives you the oversight of the business to be able to make the data to give you the oversight that you need to be able to make the decisions you need to make at the board level. Before I hand over to Emily, do we have any questions, Liam?
Yeah, thanks for that so far, Philip. Yeah, we have had a few questions coming in so far, and yeah, there is plenty of time for everyone else to get some questions in before the end of the session as well. One of the first ones which came in before the session just as the session started, sorry, It was regarding, when you were going around the sort of the clock face, so to speak, of all the different elements of employee engagement. One of the things that wasn't on there was D&I. I was wondering, people are wondering, does that have a strong connection with employee engagement?
Great question. I'm pleased you mentioned it. Diversity, I don't think we're still clear about what good diversity looks like. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You can have diversity within a team, but still sort of be fairly similar, I guess. What I like to think about more is inclusivity, because if you've got that open culture to new ideas, then that'll sort of naturally attract a more diverse kind of workforce. And by that, I think I put that in the culture bucket, if you like. I think I'd like to think more in terms of having a culture where you've got that more inclusive approach, not just focusing purely on getting diversity for the team and then diversity for the company and diversity sort of throughout the whole business. I think if you're not careful, you can sort of end up with a bit of survivorship bias, if you like, with diversity. And really, you want to think about what barriers are there to people. Do we have barriers to women getting on the board? Do we have barriers to people with disabilities joining the company? Are we turning people away through our recruitment marketing because of perhaps some of the messages that we're putting across? I think that's potentially more significant. But in terms of an actual link with engagement, I don't think there's much. There's a lot written about it, but I haven't seen any research come out about that. I know Ernst & Young, EY are doing some research at the moment about engagement and diversity. Is there a link? I think we'd like there to be a link between diversity and engagement. It kind of makes sense that there should be a link. But at the moment, I don't think there's. I think it's still early days to put anything concrete onto that.
That's great, thank you. Well, I'll leave some more time there for other people to get some more questions in as well, based on the topics that we're going to be discussing from now. But yeah, thanks very much for your answer there, Philip. So we'll now hand over to Emily.
Great, thank you so much. So I was invited to talk a little bit about how we manage HR data and employee engagement here at WinningTemp. So I am going to present to you how we work with our tool, more on an operational matter, give you a really brief overview of our routines and processes. And I'm also going to go and tie back to what Phil just showed you with the pyramid and give you 2 examples of how we have worked with the top-down and the bottom-up approach. Before I go into my slides, I want to give you a really short story of mine. If you remember the second slide that Phil showed with the chairs and the long table, I have been in several of those meetings. And I remember one in particular where I was working for an international large enterprise logistics company. And there was a site manager with about 200 employees in his warehouse where he was so frustrated. And he told me that, I can see that people are resistant to change. They don't take feedback. I can just feel how they don't appreciate my leadership. And I showed him the annual survey that we had at that point. And I told him we can actually see here also in the data that people are expressing a mistrust against the management. And they somehow think that you might be a little bit harsh sometimes in your guidance, etc. So maybe that's something that we should address and make an action plan based on. And he rose up from his chair and he told me that, Emily, that data is old and it's irrelevant because we only have 55% participation. And I tell you this story because that made me as an HR professional feel a little bit small and also frustrated because I felt that, there's actually opinions here that we should be taken seriously. But also that he was kind of right, though. It's only 50% that they state. I think we had this argument in May. The data was from September. So it was hard to argue with him. And that was why when I found the WinningTemp tool and the company that I felt like, okay, this is something that's actually going to help HR to be able to get that participation up and also act on this really relevant information in real time. With that being said, as promised, I'm going to give you a brief overview of how we work with data at WinningTemp. And first of all, we love data. We try to capture it everywhere in many different settings. We definitely work with weekly surveys. I know some of our customers prefer to have it bi-weekly or monthly, but we want to have it weekly. And we have 4 questions going out every Friday. We also have the opportunity for our employees to go into the tool and answer daily questions, which means that they can go in, click a question of their choice and give feedback upon that. And I know that a lot of us are actually doing that. So we try to capture as much as we can. We also use a custom question category approach, which means that when things are happening within our company, our industry, or in the world as a whole, we are able to create a category of questions that we think are relevant to combine with our standard questions. For example, Phil, you mentioned COVID. That was something that hit us all, and we didn't know as an employer how to support our workforce. Do they find the policies to be clear? Do they feel like they can provide a healthy work environment in their home? We were just clueless, and we realized that, we have a great tool for that. So we used it to send out questions around these areas and got really, really valuable feedback on it. We also use a high transparency approach, which means that all employees here at WinningTemp can see the temperature and all question categories in their team, but they can also see it on a company level. And I do think that's really important. And I tie back to what Phil, you told us about with the circle, that, I mean, this is not the management's data. This is not the leader's data. This is the employee's data. This is our work environment. So we need to discuss it as our own and not sit back and expect that the managers to bring us on any kind of action. So we are really keen on having this high transparency, and we link back many of our approach and activities based on the data as well. We have reoccurring temp meetings where the manager for each team are sitting down with their team members and showing the data once again and say like, hey, you know, meaningfulness has had a positive increase. Why is that? What are we doing differently? Is there something that I'm providing to you as a manager that's appreciated? Then I want that feedback. But also if it's a more of a decrease in an area, we can also discuss and have those tough conversations without going on our stomach feeling or intuition. We can actually pinpoint and say that, okay, no, we need to discuss this. Some managers here at WinningTemp have it monthly, some of them have it bi-monthly, and some of them have them quarterly. It's up to the manager and the team to decide on that. As I mentioned then, during these temp meetings, the team's discussion, okay, so what should we do as a team? What do we want to do to get an even better work environment and team spirit and engagement, etc. And there we might come up with a lot of actions that we want to do. And in the tool, we also have a feature called Actions, where we can put in that, okay, in September, we had a team kickoff. And then in December, we also made sure to write down role descriptions for everybody in the team. And we can actually see that that affected the team spirit. And I think that's amazing for HR to be able to actually show that, you know, the investment we did had an impact as well on the engagement. And last but not leastly, we have a high level of communication in our tool, which means that we answer, I think 80 to 85, 90% of all comments. So even though if a person says thumbs up or just says, I love you as a manager, or I love this event, then we can also say, okay, you know what, thanks for your feedback. And that makes the employee feel heard, that, you know, you got the message, you heard what I said. And if I bring you a more delicate or constructive matter and I want to discuss that anonymously, we also have that communication, and the HR might ask, okay, so what is it that lies behind this comment? What can we do to make it better for you? So that is our routines in a more really overview. As promised, I'm going to talk a little bit and tie back to this pyramid that Phil was showing, and give you 2 examples of when we have had the bottom-up approach, meaning that we get the data insights and then we act upon it. First of all, during summer of 2021, we had grown a lot as a company. We had a lot of new managers, we had a lot of new team members, and we could see in the tool that the leadership category was actually it was decreasing, but also going quite up and down. It was a bit unregular. And we had discussions within the team, we had workshops in the company, and we realized that, okay, we don't have perhaps a similar philosophy or a way of work that we believe should be for all leaders in the company. And as you can see here on the left-hand side in the bottom, we also got some insights from our own tool telling us that, you need to ask for feedback more. You need to increase communication, you need to build relationships and be more present. And that was a harsh reality to get. But our head of HR said that, okay, we need to send everybody to a leadership program and actually find that commonality and the terminology that we want to use in the company. And we can now see the benefits of that, which is really nice to see. Secondly, as I mentioned, we grow a lot, and we could also see that the team spirit and cross-team collaboration was a bit lacking. So we had an event in the company in November last year called Health Days at Winnington, where we had hired an ergonomics coach, we had meditation, yoga, running groups together, and tried to do that to be able to meet and discuss and find a community together that is above working together. And on the right-hand side, you can see where it says 8.5. That's the temperature from our custom question category about health days. And this, of course, gives us as a team the insight that, okay, what we did during those days were actually quite good. So we should continue doing that. And then lastly, the top-down examples of when we have decided to set a strategy and we made an investment, and we are expecting and hoping that that will also affect our own data here at Winnington. One of them is that we have implemented 2 new training platforms, one of them being Sana Labs, which is an e-learning platform that I can truly recommend, by the way. And there we can customize and do our own trainings for our employees. We also use it for internal communication. And lastly, we also have the LinkedIn Learning offer that we just launched, which was really, really appreciated. And the hope for that is that these strategic investments should be able to affect the data in a positive manner in terms of personal development. And the second example is that when we have been growing this fast, we could also see that the values and the culture was a bit, I would say that everybody had their own opinion, but we felt at least that we needed to discuss, okay, what does it mean to show passion, which is one of our values here at Winnington? What is curiosity to us? And we did a workshop together with all teams to discuss and hear from our dear colleagues what they think it means. We put that text together into value descriptions, and we also get our amazing marketing department's help with creating icons and a design to put it all together nicely. And hopefully this will help us to keep our values more top of mind and useful in our everyday work. So on the bottom here of the page, you can see the icons that we have created, and we have also added them to our internal chat program and can use them as emojis and react to people's messages with our own values, which we think is great. So yeah, that was my 2 examples of the top-down approach. Back to you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Emily. What I liked about that was you showing those 2 different approaches, because I get asked that a lot by clients, is which way round do we do things? Do we let the senior leadership team set the strategy in terms of engagement, set their priorities in terms of engagement, and sort of force that down the business, if you like? or do we allow managers sort of set their own agendas in terms of engagement and their own priorities? And of course, the answer is there is no one answer. You kind of have to meet in the middle and allow managers some latitude, some autonomy to do their own little projects as well, and their own teams. But also, yeah, you do need some guidance from HR as well. So I like how you've pulled together that balance. That's interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to end, if I may, with a little story. And it's those who know me know I like a good story. Unfortunately, it's a sad story, but it's about what you can see in front of you, the US Navy destroyer, the USS John S. McCain. And on a Sunday night in August 2017, it crashed into the side of a 12,000-ton oil tanker off the coast of Singapore. Unfortunately, 10 seamen lost their lives in the collision, and the ship it took about 3 years to get the ship repaired. But the thing is that both ships were well fitted with radar and detection technology. But as you expect from a US Marine ship, the USS John S. McCain also had a GPS tracking, automatic identification systems, an AIS, and state-of-the-art integrated bridge and navigation system, an IBNS, and I'm sure a bunch of other bits and pieces that we can't talk about because they're top secret. So the question is, how did the sailors on the bridge not spot this whacking great big oil tanker? How did they hit it? They must have been flooded with data about what's going on around them. How did this slip through the net? In response, Aaron Sorensen, who's head of maritime technology and regulation at the Baltic and International Maritime Council, said the following: instead of looking at the instruments, you have to look out at the window to see how the situation actually evolves. He explains that maybe today there's a bit of a fixation on technology. I hope that gives a little bit of context to what we're talking about here. And it's I see with clients, they get a bit too much into the data, spending a bit too much time looking at the technology, looking at what the numbers are showing them, without realizing that there's actually people behind those numbers. And sometimes, yeah, you do need to look out the window. You do need to go to the water coolers and the coffee machines to see what is actually going on in the business. And you can't just rely on the spreadsheets and the pivot tables and the PowerPoint slides. You need to see it in context and see these people as human beings as well. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. I'll hand over to Liam if you can. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, there certainly are. And yeah, thanks both for your presentations. They're really, really informative. And Phil, I have to say, as a Mancunian, I really enjoyed your comment about Liverpool FC. But yeah, thanks very much for those presentations, guys. The first questions that I'll come to regard one of the bits that Emily was just talking about in her side of the presentation, and it was regarding the weekly surveys that you mentioned sending out there. So we've had someone in the audience ask, firstly, was asking if you could be able to share, some of the questions that you ask in those weekly surveys. And a follow-on question from that for both of you, I suppose, is how do you make sure that there's a high participation level in those surveys?
I don't know all the questions by heart, unfortunately, but I know that during leadership we talk about how you feel trust. If you feel like you have enough feedback from your manager, if you feel like he or her are giving you the right kind of information to be able to do a good job. We measure stress, bullying, discrimination. So I think it's like 80 questions we have, Phil, right?
It's about 60, 65 questions, but what we do is, without getting too salesy, is the AI in the system picks up on answers from previous weeks and sends follow-up questions to those. So it's not like we define the questions and we send them out ourselves. They're based on what researchers have told us and what the AI is picking up on, based on those trends that it's getting through the previous week's answers. So the short answer is there's no one answer to what the data tells us. In terms of participation, Emily, what would you say about keeping the participation high?
I agree with what you said in the beginning, that we can't just sit back and watch the data. We also need to interact with it and talk about consistency. So when are we going to talk about the data? How are we going to talk about the data? Link it to the things that you are doing. I know when I worked as a customer success manager, I told all my customers that, if the leadership team goes out and says that we're going to do this initiative now, link it to the temperature. Tell them about how we could see that team spirit had a decrease, or we want to boost it even more. Here's the data from that. So to use it in your internal communication and link back initiatives to it, I think it's really important. And as Phil said, mention the consistency, how we're going to work with it. So if we get the right expectations.
I think I'd just add to that if we think back to that circle of continuous improvement and data-driven management, there's two sides to the circle, and the onus is on both sides to work together. Employees need to know that they're coming to these team meetings and they've got to contribute. If they don't, they're going to feel left out, because the data being discussed is not something if they don't contribute, then the data being discussed is not something they've contributed to. So they're going to feel left out. If everybody's talking about all the feedback, if the manager's talking about the feedback and they've not had a say in what that feedback actually is. I think also, yes, the onus is on the management as well to encourage it and to make sure that it is being listened to. And we have a phrase here in the UK. You said we did. If you can put like that sort of matching up and saying, like Emily said, you asked us for I don't know, a better coffee machine. So yeah, we've gone out and looked at putting that into place, because we all know how important coffee is. So it's the onus is on both sides to keep that circle spinning and to keep the dialogue going.
That's great, thanks. And in terms of the importance of that feedback, does it matter particularly if that feedback is anonymous at all, or how crucial is that to the process?
Emily, shall I answer that one?
Yeah, please do. I can continue.
I actually think that it is incredibly important. I think it adds to the psychological safety. I think people feel more candid, more open when they're able to give anonymous feedback. Obviously, there'll be times when, as a manager, you need to be talking to the person face to face, and maybe that is, like I said, with the battleship, it's time to sort of step out the window and say, look, we need to have a one-to-one to discuss this further. Perhaps for more serious issues, maybe HR needs to intervene. For more sensitive issues, discrimination, harassment, bullying, stress, that sort of thing, maybe HR has a part to play in. And really, you can't have that in an anonymous forum. But I think really if you're going to get a sense of inclusivity, if you're going to get a sense that people can contribute without fear or favor, or without worrying that there's going to be the repercussions to potentially negative feedback, particularly for the manager, I think you do need to have that anonymity there, certainly to begin with. Certainly, I know it gets frustrating for managers because they kind of want to shake the person and say, well, tell me who it is that's saying this. You don't want to get into witch hunts. You don't want to get into who said what about whom. Really, as a manager, you're sort of taking a step back and saying, well, look, what is the picture of my team? What are they thinking? And just because one person gives you an answer, it doesn't mean that doesn't affect everybody else in the team. It could be that it's just that they've happened to have that one particular question and they've answered it in that particular way. It may be, in a good result. I'll say back to you, Liam. I'm a Spurs fan, so when we beat Man City, I came away feeling very positive for that day, and that kind of, I'd like to think, maybe spread throughout the team, and other people feel good about it, and that positivity can spread either directly or indirectly to other people in the team. So you're not really that fussed about who it is and what. You're more interested in what's going on and what do we need to address.
I totally agree. And I think that managers should use the anonymity as something positive as well. As Phil said just recently, that we shouldn't get into, okay, who was this that wrote this comment? It's opinion of a person. That person might have a hard time at home as well. There might be also that if you have a large team, you will never be the perfect manager for everyone. So to be able to take this constructive feedback and work with it from a team level without getting into wondering who it might have been, choose the red smile instead of the green one. I think that's important. But unlimited for the user is important to be able to be 100% transparent.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you both. And you both kind of touched on there the idea of managers looking at feedback and sometimes pulling the hair out over reactions and that sort of thing. So have either of you got any advice for managers who might not be comfortable with receiving that feedback?
Do you want to?
It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend it's easy. It can be pretty brutal. You're getting feedback about how things are. You like to think, as a manager, you think everything's rosy, but actually getting feedback from your teams, warts and all, can be tough. and as I say, as Brits, you know, we tend, even on the positive side, you know, getting praise and getting good stuff through from the teams as well can be a little bit uncomfortable as well sometimes. But it is a mindset shift. It is a paradigm change in terms of the way you manage your teams, because it's better to get that out in the open and understand it and know what we can do about it, rather than let these things fester and just sit there. Even, as I said, even if it's things that you can't do anything about, and there will be things as a manager you can't do stuff about. You know, I won't go into another football analogy, but you come away from a football match and you feel upset the next day at work. There's nothing you can do about it, but it just is as it is. And you need to know, as a manager, my boss needs to know, hey, you know, these things are going on in his life. Just be a little bit sensitive to that, even though they will affect engagement, performance, and motivation. But nonetheless, you need to be aware of them, and sort of make sort of empathy and whatever it is you can do to take into account. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard to get it up front, but try to look at it like from the perspective that personal development growth is always challenging. It's never going to be easy peasy, everybody loves you. It's going to be opinions right in your face, but I would rather have it that way and be able to, as a manager, make informed decisions based on that, instead of just, oh, I think they want this, or I think they want that. And instead, by really keen on putting my time where the pain is. So yeah. I would say, I mean, growth is painful, but it's important for us. And as HR, it's important to be able to coach the managers in that, because it's going to be a transition in the beginning.
Yeah, it's important not to take it personally. It's not personal. It's just meant as feedback to improve. And you're absolutely right. Growth mindset, you know, is definitely comes into play here.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you both very much for answering those questions there. I hope we've managed to get through all the really fundamental ones there with some quite thorough answers. Thank you very much for everyone who participated in the polls today as well. We really appreciate your feedback there, and I'm sure the team are going to be looking at those results and gauging things from there as well. So I will say thank you to Emily and Phil for today's presentation. That was really, really insightful. And as I mentioned at the start of today's presentation, we're going to wrap things up now with a little video demo of how Winning Temp works. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Welcome to Winning Temp. Winning Temp is an AI-driven platform that helps companies engage their employees at a whole new level. Here's how it works. Our platform uses machine learning to tailor-make surveys for employees. These are sent out weekly or however often you'd like. The questions are based on research about the real drivers of motivation and performance. The surveys are quick too. They take employees less than 10 seconds to answer, and they can leave anonymous comments if they like. This data creates what we call temperature. In one quick scroll, you can understand how employees are feeling in real time, across the areas that matter most according to science, plus any other areas you would like to gather data on. Your managers get their own dashboards, where they can see the full picture of what's happening within their own teams, and dig into the first-hand feedback. If they're short on time, they can simply go to Insights to see the most important developments to be aware of, like what strength their team is showing, what the current challenges are, and if there are urgent problems that need attention. All this information can be easily pulled up in a report. Managers can then use this data as a starting point for important conversations and easier decision-making. As a leader, you can consult the heat map to check in on progress across your whole organization and know exactly where to step in to offer support. Don't leave anything to hindsight. Get the full picture of employee experience in real time and start taking action on what matters most with Winning Temp.